a woman was struck dead by an arrow fired by the emperor on the battlefield. As she lay in her final moments, on the verge of death, she unexpectedly traveled back in time to 3 years earlier. While she was still puzzling over what had happened, she suddenly caught sight of her beloved. Eagerly, she ran up to him only to find that he did not recognize her at all. Instead, he walked toward a woman who looked exactly like her. This filled her with immense confusion. If that woman was her own self from 3 years ago, then who was she now? As she was lost in thought, a maid suddenly appeared and addressed her as the princess. Only then did she realize that she had become a princess sent by a hostile state for a marriage alliance. It turned out that in her previous life, she was a noble empress. However, the emperor suddenly fell seriously ill, leaving her with no choice but to handle state affairs alone. The emperor's younger brother, consumed by jealousy of the power she held, colluded with court officials in a plot to assassinate her. A general who had grown up with her was determined to protect her. He devised a desperate plan. He deliberately stabbed her in front of everyone, then secretly swapped her body with that of a death row inmate. This ruse was what saved her life. Yet, just as she and the general were preparing to sneak out of the city, they were suddenly stopped. The leader of the group blocking their way was none other than the emperor, who was supposed to be gravely ill. She initially thought he had come to rescue her, but little did she know that everything was part of the emperor's elaborate scheme. In truth, the emperor had always been in love with her elder sister. 3 years earlier, her sister had been killed by bandits while trying to save her, and the emperor had placed all the blame for this tragedy on her. But due to the immense power of her family, the emperor dared not act against her openly. Instead, he pretended to be ill, making her the target of everyone's envy and resentment. Learning the truth left her utterly devastated, but the emperor still refused to let her go. Even though the general led his men to fight desperately to protect her, they were all eventually slaughtered by the emperor's army. It was at that moment that she finally realized the general had always loved her. She swore that if she could have a second chance at life, she would definitely marry him. But just as she made this vow, the emperor shot an arrow at them. The general, in a final act of devotion, stepped in front of her to block the arrow. Tragically, both of them still died on the battlefield. But in the very next second, she was reborn, returning to 3 years earlier. With a burning resolve, she swore that in this life, she would take revenge on the emperor. Little did she know, the princess she had become was actually the enemy she had hated so deeply in her previous life. In other words, in this life, the woman not only has to seek revenge against the emperor but also has to be on guard against retaliation from her own past self.